The carriage door slammed shut behind her, and Elena Virelli pressed her trembling fingers against her eyelids. Not because she couldn't see, but because she needed everyone to believe she couldn't. 3 years of this lie. 3 years of walking through darkness she'd invented, all to escape men who wanted to own her, use her, drain every last coin from the fortune her father left behind. But tonight, standing at the iron gates of Blackthorn Estate, the weight of that deception felt heavier than ever. Because the man waiting inside, Duke Adrian Hale, wasn't like the others, and that terrified her more than any predator ever had. If you want to see how far Elena's dangerous game will take her, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The rain came down in sheets, turning the gravel drive into a mess of mud and stone. Elena kept her head bowed, one hand resting lightly on the arm of Mrs. Brennan, the stout housekeeper who'd been sent to retrieve her from the carriage. The older woman's grip was firm, almost protective, and Elena hated how easy it was to lean into that false comfort. "Careful now, miss," Mrs. Brennan murmured, guiding her up the stone steps. "The threshold's a bit uneven here." Elena let herself stumble slightly, just enough to sell it. Her boot caught on nothing, and she gasped, fingers clutching tighter. "I've got you. Don't you worry." Don't worry. As if worry wasn't the only thing keeping her alive. The heavy doors of Blackthorn groaned open, and a rush of warm air hit her face. She could smell wood smoke, old leather, something floral she couldn't quite place. The entry hall must have been massive. Her footsteps echoed against stone, and the air carried that particular kind of chill that only came with high ceilings and empty space. "His Grace is waiting in the study," Mrs. Brennan said softly. "He's been most eager to meet you." Elena's stomach twisted. Eager. That word never meant anything good. She'd been running for 3 years, first from her uncle's scheming business partners, then from the distant cousins who crawled out of the woodwork the moment her father's will was read. Everyone wanted a piece of the Virelli shipping fortune. Everyone thought a 19-year-old girl, freshly orphaned and alone, would be easy to control. They'd been wrong. But control came in many forms. And sometimes the only way to keep your freedom was to convince the world you didn't have any. So Elena Virelli became blind. Not literally. Her eyes worked perfectly fine, sharp enough to read contracts by candlelight, sharp enough to spot a liar across a crowded room. But no one needed to know that. A blind heiress was useless to ambitious men. She couldn't run a business, couldn't sign documents without help, couldn't see the trap closing around her until it was too late. She was a burden, a liability, a problem no one wanted to inherit, and that made her safe. Or it had, until her solicitor, old Mr. Pemberton, who'd served her father for 30 years, received word that the last of her safe houses had been compromised. Someone had tracked her to the cottage in Kent. Someone was asking questions. Pemberton had made arrangements quickly. Too quickly, maybe. He'd called in a favor from an old friend, some duke up north who owed him something from decades past. A place to hide. Protection, he'd said, just until things cooled down. Elena hadn't asked questions. She'd learned not to. But now, walking through the echoing corridors of Blackthorn Estate with rain hammering against the windows, she wondered if she'd made a mistake. "Here we are, miss." Mrs. Brennan stopped in front of a tall door, dark wood carved with some kind of family crest Elena couldn't make out without actually looking at it. She kept her gaze unfocused, staring somewhere past the housekeeper's shoulder. "His Grace is just inside. Shall I announce you?" "Please." The door opened. Elena heard it before she felt the shift in air, the soft click of the latch, the faint creak of hinges. Then Mrs. Brennan's voice, formal and clear. "Your Grace, Miss Elena Virelli has arrived." A pause. Then a man's voice, low and steady. "Thank you, Mrs. Brennan. That will be all." "Of course, Your Grace." The housekeeper's hand slipped away from Elena's arm. For one horrible second, she stood alone in the doorway, exposed and unanchored. Then she felt it, a presence, moving closer. Footsteps, barely audible, on thick carpet. "Miss Virelli." The voice was different up close. Deeper. There was something careful in it, like he was choosing each word deliberately. "You must be exhausted from the journey. Please sit." A hand touched her elbow, light, brief, just enough to guide. Elena let herself be led forward, counting steps in her head. 5, 6. Then the soft brush of upholstery against her fingers. She sat, smoothing her damp skirts, and finally allowed herself to look. Adrian Hale was not what she'd expected. Most men in his position, title, wealth, power, carried themselves with a kind of casual arrogance. They filled rooms without trying, demanded attention just by breathing. But the Duke of Blackthorn stood a few paces back, hands loosely clasped behind him, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. He was tall, broad-shouldered, maybe a few years older than her, 30, perhaps. Dark hair that looked like he'd been running his hands through it, sharp features that might have been handsome if they weren't so carefully neutral. He wore no jacket, just shirt sleeves and a waistcoat, like he'd been working at something before she arrived. But it was his eyes that caught her. They were gray, storm cloud gray, and they looked at her like she was something fragile that might break if he moved too fast. Careful, she reminded herself. Everyone's dangerous until proven otherwise. I apologize for the circumstances of your arrival, Adrian said quietly. Pemberton's letter was brief. I understand you've had difficulties. Elena kept her expression blank, her gaze fixed somewhere just left of his face. You're very kind to offer me shelter, Your Grace. I won't impose for long. It's no imposition. He moved to a chair opposite hers, settling into it with the kind of controlled ease that spoke of military training or at least rigorous discipline. Pemberton is an old friend. If he says you need protection, then you have it, for as long as necessary. I appreciate that. Silence stretched between them. Elena focused on her breathing, on keeping her hands still in her lap. She could feel him watching her, not with the predatory assessment she was used to, but with something else. Concern, maybe. Or curiosity. May I ask, he said finally, what you're running from? Straight to it, then. No pretense, no dancing around the subject. Elena considered her answer carefully. Pemberton would have told him the basics. Orphaned heiress, disputed inheritance, potential threats. But the details were hers to control. Men who believe I owe them something, she said simply. Money, mostly. My father's business had many investors. Some of them think his death entitles them to more than their share. And your family? Can't they intervene? A bitter smile tugged at her lips. I have no family, Your Grace. My father was an only child. My mother died when I was 8. There are distant relations, cousins and such, but they're part of the problem, not the solution. Adrian's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Understanding, maybe. Or sympathy. Then you're safe here, he said quietly. Whatever you need, privacy, security, time, you have it. The sincerity in his voice made her chest tighten. She wanted to believe him. That was the problem. Thank you, she whispered. He stood, and she heard the soft rustle of fabric as he moved toward the door. Mrs. Brennan will show you to your rooms. If you need anything, ask. The estate is large, but the staff is trustworthy. You won't be disturbed unless you wish it. Elena rose as well, carefully, as if the world might tilt under her feet at any moment. Your Grace, he paused, hand on the door. Why are you helping me? You don't know me. Pemberton's friendship can only go so far. For a long moment, Adrian didn't answer. Then he turned, just enough that she could see his profile. Because someone should, he said simply, and because I know what it's like to be alone. Then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him. Elena stood in the empty study, rain still drumming against the windows, and felt something crack inside her chest. Not breaking, not yet, but shifting, dangerous. Because Duke Adrian Hale, with his careful hands and quiet voice, was exactly the kind of man who could make her forget why she was lying in the first place. The rooms Mrs. Brennan led her to were on the second floor, overlooking the east gardens. Or so the housekeeper explained as they climbed the wide staircase, Elena's hand trailing along the polished banister. You'll have plenty of light in the mornings, miss? His Grace thought you might enjoy the bird song. There's a nest of sparrows just outside your window. They've been there 3 summers running. Elena made a soft sound of acknowledgement, focusing on the count of steps, the turn of the landing, the texture of the runner beneath her boots, building a map in her mind, just in case. The sitting room was smaller than she'd expected, furnished simply but well. She could smell beeswax and lavender, fresh linens and old wood. A fire had been laid in the grate, crackling softly. "The bedroom's through there," Mrs. Brennan said, gesturing toward a door Elena pretended not to see. "I've had a bath drawn for you, and supper will be sent up within the hour. His Grace thought you might prefer to rest tonight rather than dine with the household." "That's very thoughtful." "He's a good man, our Duke." There was warmth in the housekeeper's voice, genuine affection. "Took over the estate 5 years back when his father passed, and he's done right by all of us. You'll be safe here, miss. I promise you that." Elena wanted to believe her. She wanted to believe all of it. The safety, the kindness, the promise of rest. But 3 years of running had taught her better. After Mrs. Brennan left, Elena waited a full 10 minutes before she allowed herself to move. She crossed to the window first, careful to keep her steps hesitant and uncertain, just in case someone was watching. The glass was cold under her fingertips, rain still streaking down in heavy rivulets. Beyond the gardens, she could see the edge of the forest, dark and dense, stretching toward the mountains. No lights anywhere, just trees and rain and darkness. Isolated, which could be good or very, very bad. She turned back to the room, letting her gaze sweep over every detail. The furniture was quality but worn, nothing ostentatious. A writing desk sat near the window, empty except for a lamp and a small vase of dried flowers. The bookshelves were half full, the spines cracked and faded like they'd actually been read. Lived in, she thought. Not staged. That was unexpected. A soft knock interrupted her assessment. "Miss, your bath is ready." A young maid stood in the doorway, auburn hair pulled back in a neat bun, smile shy but warm. She couldn't have been more than 16. "Thank you," Elena murmured. The girl bobbed a curtsy. "I'm Anne, miss. I'll be looking after you during your stay, if you need help with anything." She trailed off, clearly unsure how to offer assistance to someone who couldn't see. Elena gave her a gentle smile. "I can manage, Anne, but thank you." Relief flooded the girl's face. "Of course, miss. I'll just be in the sitting room if you change your mind." Alone again, Elena slipped into the bedroom and closed the door behind her. The bath was still steaming, set near another fireplace. Someone had laid out towels, soap that smelled like rosemary, a robe that looked far too expensive to be a guest amenity. She undressed quickly, pins and laces familiar under her fingers, even after 3 years of pretending helplessness. The hot water was a shock after days of travel, and she sank into it with a sigh that came from somewhere deep in her bones. For just a moment, she let herself relax, let the heat seep into tired muscles, let the steam cloud her thoughts. Then she opened her eyes and stared at the ceiling, at the elaborate plasterwork she wasn't supposed to be able to see. 3 years, she thought. 3 years of this lie, and you're tired. Tired of the act, tired of the fear, tired of running. But what choice did she have? If she revealed the truth now, told Adrian Hale that she could see perfectly well, that she'd been deceiving everyone since her father's funeral, what then? Would he understand? Would he still offer protection, or would he see her as just another liar, another schemer trying to manipulate him? And even if he did understand, even if he didn't throw her out, what about the others? The cousins Pemberton had mentioned, the ones who lived here at Blackthorn. Victor and Elias Hale, Adrian's father's brother's sons. What would they do if they knew the truth? No, the lie was safer. The lie had kept her alive this long. She just had to hold on a little longer. Supper arrived exactly when promised. A simple meal of roasted chicken, vegetables, and fresh bread that tasted better than anything she'd eaten in weeks. Elena ate slowly, methodically, using her fingers more than strictly necessary. Building the illusion. When Anne returned to collect the tray, Elena asked, "How many people live at Blackthorn?" The maid brightened, clearly happy to chat. "Oh, not so many as used to, miss. His Grace, of course, and his cousins, Mr. Victor and Mr. Elias. They've been here since their father passed 2 years back. Then there's Mrs. Brennan, myself, cook, the groundskeeper Thomas, and a few day staff from the village. It's a quiet household, really. The cousins, Elena said carefully. Are they kind? Anne's smile faltered, just for a second. They're gentlemen, miss. Mr. Victor handles a lot of the estate's business affairs, very clever with numbers and such. Mr. Elias is more, social. He spends time in London mostly, but he's here for the season. The hesitation said more than the words. I see, Elena murmured. And the Duke? What's he like? His Grace? Now the smile returned, full force. Oh, he's wonderful, miss, truly. He works so hard, up before dawn most days, out with Thomas checking fences or in the study going over accounts. He cares, you know, about the estate, about the tenants. My father farms the north fields, and when our barn collapsed last winter, His Grace paid for the repairs himself. Didn't even ask for higher rents. Something warm unfurled in Elena's chest. Dangerous. Foolish. He sounds like a good man. The best, Anne said firmly. Then she blushed, like she'd overstepped. Begging your pardon, miss, I shouldn't gossip. It's not gossip if it's true. The girl grinned and curtsied. Will there be anything else, miss? No, thank you. You've been very kind. After Anne left, Elena sat by the fire and tried not to think about storm-gray eyes and careful hands. Tried not to think about the way Adrian had looked at her, not with pity, but with something softer. Respect, maybe. Like she was a person, not a problem. Dangerous, she reminded herself again. He's dangerous because he makes you want to trust him. But late that night, lying in a bed softer than anything she'd slept in for months, listening to rain fade into silence and the first calls of morning birds, Elena Virelli allowed herself one small, reckless thought. What if I could stop running? What if I could stay? Then she closed her eyes, her perfectly functional eyes, and dreamed of freedom she'd never let herself imagine before. Morning came gray and cold, but the rain had stopped. Elena woke to Anne's soft knock and the smell of fresh tea. Good morning, miss. I've brought breakfast. His Grace asked if you'd join him for a walk in the gardens later, once the mud's dried a bit. He thought you might enjoy the fresh air. Elena's pulse kicked up. A walk. With the Duke. Alone. That's very kind, she said, keeping her voice steady. What time? 11, if that suits you. 2 hours. Plenty of time to prepare, to make sure every detail of her performance was perfect. She dressed carefully with Anne's help, choosing a simple gray day dress that wouldn't show mud stains. Her hair she left mostly down, just a few pins to keep it from her face. She needed to look helpless, but not completely incapable. It was a balance she'd perfected over 3 years. At 11 precisely, Anne led her downstairs and outside to where Adrian waited near the garden path. He changed into boots and a heavy coat, practical rather than fashionable. Miss Virelli, he said, and she heard the smile in his voice. I'm glad you agreed. The grounds are quite beautiful, even in autumn. He offered his arm, and Elena took it, hating how solid it felt under her fingers, how steady. They walked in silence for a while, gravel crunching under their feet. Elena could smell wet earth and dying leaves, could feel the weak sun on her face. It would have been peaceful if her heart wasn't hammering against her ribs. Pemberton told me you've been traveling for some time, Adrian said eventually. It must be exhausting. It is, she admitted, because that at least was true. You're safe here. I want you to understand that. Whatever arrangements need to be made for your comfort or security, they'll be made. You barely know me. True. He paused, adjusting their pace to match hers. But I know Pemberton, and I know he wouldn't ask this favor unless it was serious. That's enough. Elena felt her throat tighten. You trust people very easily. Not easily, Adrian said quietly, but when I do, I trust completely. Stop, she wanted to say. Stop being kind. Stop making this harder. Instead, she asked, what about your cousins? Will they mind my presence? His hand tensed slightly under hers, just for a second, but she felt it. Victor and Elias have their own concerns. You won't be bothered by them. There was something in his tone, not quite warning, but close. Protective, maybe. Anne mentioned they handle business affairs? Victor does, yes. He has a head for numbers and investments. Elias, Adrian trailed off, choosing his words. Elias is less involved in the estate. He prefers London society. Meaning he's useless, Elena translated, and Victor's the dangerous one. They walked further, past overgrown rose bushes and empty fountains. The estate was beautiful in a faded way, like it had been grand once and was struggling to remember how. I grew up here, Adrian said suddenly, like he'd heard her thoughts. Before my father lost interest in maintaining it. I'm trying to restore what I can, but it's slow work. It's lovely, Elena said honestly. You can't see it. The words were gentle, not accusatory, but they hit her like a fist. I can feel it, she said carefully. The air, the space, the quiet. It's peaceful. Adrian made a soft sound. Agreement, maybe. Or understanding. I hope it brings you peace then. However long you need to stay. And there it was again. That kindness. That steady certainty that made her want to scream and confess everything all at once. Instead, she smiled and let him lead her back toward the house, where two figures stood waiting on the terrace. Both tall. Both watching. The Hale cousins, she assumed, and from the cold smile on the nearest one's face, Elena knew her quiet sanctuary had just gotten complicated. Victor Hale was handsome in a sharp, calculating way. All angles and cold assessment, like he was constantly measuring the worth of everything around him. He stood with one hand in his pocket, the other holding a glass of something amber. Even from a distance, Elena could feel the weight of his stare. Beside him, Elias looked softer. Blonde where Victor was dark, with an easy smile and relaxed posture that might have been charming if it didn't feel so practiced. Adrian, Victor called out as they approached. You didn't mention we had a guest. There was an edge to his voice. Not quite hostile, but not welcoming either. Miss Elena Virelli, Adrian said evenly, his hand still supporting her elbow. She'll be staying with us for a time. Elena, these are my cousins, Victor and Elias Hale. Elena turned her unfocused gaze in their direction and offered a small curtsy. It's a pleasure to meet you both. The pleasure is ours, Elias said smoothly, stepping forward. Any friend of Adrian's is welcome at Blackthorn. She's Pemberton's ward, Victor corrected, his tone clipped. Isn't that right? A family friend, Elena said carefully. How convenient. Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. And you'll be staying long? Victor, Adrian warned, I'm simply asking, cousin. We should know who's under our roof. The tension crackled between them. Years of something Elena couldn't quite name. Power struggle, maybe, or old resentment. Miss Virelli will stay as long as necessary, Adrian said flatly, and you'll both treat her with courtesy. Elias laughed, light and careless. Of course, cousin. No need for dramatics. Welcome to Blackthorn, Miss Virelli. I'm sure you'll find it interesting. The way he said it made Elena's skin crawl. Victor took a long sip of his drink, still watching her. Adrian mentioned you have difficulties seeing. Must make travel quite challenging. I manage, Elena said quietly. I'm sure you do. There was something in his voice, skepticism, maybe, or suspicion. He knows, a voice whispered in her head, or he suspects, but that was impossible. She'd been careful. She was always careful. If you'll excuse us, Adrian said coldly, Miss Virelli needs rest. He guided her past them without waiting for a response, his hand firm and protective on her arm. Elena could feel both cousins watching until they disappeared inside. Only when they were back in the entry hall did Adrian speak. I apologize for them. Victor especially can be, difficult. It's fine, Elena said, even though her heart was still racing. I'm an unexpected guest. It's natural they'd have questions. Questions, yes. Interrogation, no. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. They've been managing some of the estate's finances while I focus on the land. Victor's made some investments that I'm not entirely comfortable with, but he insists they're sound. Elena's instincts sharpened. What kind of investments? Shipping ventures mostly, foreign trade. He says the returns will be substantial, but Adrian trailed off, like he'd said too much. But you don't trust him, Elena finished quietly. Their eyes met, really met, and for one horrible second Elena forgot to look away, forgot to keep her gaze unfocused and blank. Adrian's expression shifted. Something flickered in those storm-gray eyes, curiosity, or maybe recognition. Then she blinked, breaking the moment, and he stepped back. I should let you rest, he said, his voice carefully neutral again. Thank you for the walk. Of course. He left her standing in the hallway, and Elena leaned against the cool wall, pressing her palm to her racing heart. Careful, she told herself, you're getting careless. But as she climbed the stairs to her room, she couldn't shake the feeling that Blackthorn Estate had just shifted from sanctuary to battlefield, and she had no idea which side she was fighting on. Elena spent the next 3 days mapping Blackthorn in her mind. Every hallway, every turn, every creaking floorboard. She learned the rhythm of the household, Mrs. Brennan's morning rounds at 7 sharp, Anne's cheerful chatter during breakfast, the way Adrian's study door closed with a distinctive click around 9 each evening, and she learned the cousins' patterns, too. Victor kept to the west wing, where he'd converted a former drawing room into an office. She could hear him sometimes through the walls, sharp voices on the telephone, the rustle of papers, the scratch of pen on ledger. He worked late, often past midnight, and rarely joined Adrian for meals. Elias was harder to track. He drifted through the estate like smoke, appearing in doorways with that easy smile, always watching, always assessing. He tried to engage her in conversation twice, once in the library, once in the morning room, but Elena had kept her answers vague and her demeanor fragile enough that he'd lost interest quickly, or so she hoped. On the 4th morning, Adrian knocked on her sitting room door himself. Anne had just finished helping Elena with her hair when his voice came through the wood. Miss Virelli, may I speak with you? Elena's pulse jumped. She smoothed her skirts and called out, Of course, Your Grace. He entered looking tired, dark circles under his eyes, like he hadn't slept. His shirt was wrinkled, collar loose. He'd been working all night, she realized. I apologize for the early intrusion, he said, staying near the door. But I wanted to ask you something before Victor corners me again. What is it? Adrian hesitated, then crossed to the window. He stood there with his back to her, shoulders tight. You mentioned you're familiar with business matters. Your father's shipping company. Were you involved in the operations? Elena's throat went dry. Careful territory here. Very careful. I was, she said slowly. Before my father passed. He believed I should understand how the company functioned. So you know contracts, investment structures, financial documentation. Yes. He turned to face her, and the intensity in his gaze made her want to look away. But she couldn't, not without breaking character. Victor has been pushing an investment, Adrian said quietly, a joint venture with a shipping consortium based in Rotterdam. The projected returns are substantial, almost too substantial, but every time I ask to review the full documentation, he tells me it's still being finalized. How long has he been telling you that? 3 months. Elena felt something cold settle in her stomach. That's a long time for paperwork. That's what I thought. Adrian ran a hand through his hair, frustration bleeding into every line of his body. But Victor's always been shrewd with money. He tripled the estate's income in the first year he took over the accounts. I trusted him to handle things while I focused on the land, the tenants. Now I'm wondering if that was a mistake. You think he's hiding something? It wasn't a question. I think... Adrian paused, choosing words. I think my cousin is very good at making things look legitimate when they might not be, and I think I've been too distracted to notice. Elena's mind raced. This was dangerous. Getting involved in Blackthorn's internal politics, in the cousin's schemes. It was the exact opposite of keeping her head down and staying invisible. But the way Adrian looked at her, exhausted and uncertain and trying so hard to do the right thing, made something crack open in her chest. What do you want from me? She asked quietly. I want you to listen. He crossed to sit in the chair across from hers, close enough that she could see the stubble on his jaw, the worry lines creasing his forehead. Victor's hosting a dinner tonight with some potential investors, men from London, associates of Elias. They're coming to discuss expanding the Rotterdam venture. I'll be there, but I don't have your father's expertise. I don't know what questions to ask. You want me to attend? I want you to tell me if something sounds wrong. You don't have to speak, just listen. If you hear anything that concerns you, anything at all, we can discuss it privately afterward. It was a terrible idea. Sitting through a business dinner pretending to be blind while actually analyzing every word, every document, every subtle tell, it was risky beyond measure. One slip, one moment of carelessness, and Victor would know. But Adrian was looking at her with something that felt dangerously close to hope. All right, Elena heard herself say. I'll listen. The relief that flooded his face made her stomach twist with guilt. Thank you, he said softly. I know it's a great deal to ask, especially given your condition, but I trust your judgment, Miss Virelli. I don't know why, but I do. You shouldn't, Elena thought. You really, really shouldn't. But all she said was, "What time is dinner?" The dining room at Blackthorn was meant to intimidate. High ceilings, dark paneling, a table that could seat 20 but tonight held only 8. Crystal chandeliers threw fractured light across silver settings and wine glasses that probably cost more than most people earned in a year. Elena entered on Adrian's arm, acutely aware of every eye turning toward her. She'd chosen her dress carefully, deep blue silk that Anne had helped her into, high-necked and modest. Her hair was pinned back simply, no jewelry except her mother's small pearl earrings. She needed to look like what she claimed to be, a fragile, helpless ward seeking protection, not a threat. "Gentlemen," Adrian announced as they approached the table, "this is Miss Elena Virelli. She's a guest of the estate and will be joining us this evening." 4 men rose from their seats. Victor and Elias she knew, but the other 2 were strangers. Both older, well-dressed, with the particular kind of confidence that came from old money and newer greed. "Miss Virelli," the taller one said, bowing slightly. "Reginald Thornberry, at your service." "What a delightful surprise." "Indeed," the other added. His voice was rougher, accent hard to place. "Marcus Webb. Charmed, I'm sure." Elena murmured polite greetings, letting Adrian guide her to a seat between him and Elias. She kept her hands visible on the table, her gaze unfocused but aimed generally toward the candles in the center. Victor sat at the head of the table, playing host with practiced ease. "I'm glad you could join us, Miss Virelli. Adrian mentioned you've been unwell. I hope our humble gathering won't overtax you." The concern in his voice was so false, it made her teeth ache. "You're very kind," she said softly. "I'm feeling much better." "Excellent." He lifted his wine glass. "Then let us begin. To profitable ventures and wise partnerships." The toast was echoed around the table, glasses clinking. Elena took the smallest sip of wine and set her glass down carefully. The first course arrived, some kind of soup that smelled of leeks and cream. Conversation stayed light at first, the usual social niceties. Weather, politics, the state of London's theaters. Elena ate slowly, methodically, while her mind catalogued everything. Thornberry did most of the talking, expansive and charming, dropping names and connections like breadcrumbs. Webb was quieter, more watchful. He reminded her of a hunting dog waiting for the signal to strike. Elias, positioned across from her, kept glancing her way. Not quite suspicious, but curious, like he was trying to figure her out. It was Victor who finally steered the conversation toward business. "The Rotterdam venture is progressing well," he said, dabbing his mouth with a napkin. "Thornberry's consortium has secured warehouse space and established relationships with 3 major textile manufacturers. We're positioned to dominate the northern trade routes within 18 months. Ambitious timeline," Adrian noted. His voice was neutral, but Elena heard the edge beneath it. "Ambitious rewards require ambitious action, cousin." Victor smiled. "The initial investment of £20,000 has already yielded returns. Our share of the first shipment alone netted $3,000. Elena's mind sharpened. Those numbers were good. Too good for a venture that new. "What was the cargo?" she asked quietly. The table went silent. All eyes turned to her. "I beg your pardon?" Victor's smile didn't waver, but his eyes went cold. "The cargo. Elena repeated, keeping her tone gentle and confused. In the first shipment, what did you transport? Textiles, Thornbury supplied smoothly. Premium wool from Scotland. The Dutch market pays well for quality. And the manufacturers? Elena continued, feeling Adrian's attention sharpen beside her. You said you established relationships with 3. Are they contracting exclusively with your consortium, or do they maintain other partnerships? Webb shifted in his seat. Victor's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Mix of both, Elias said, his tone just a shade too casual. Standard practice, really. Why do you ask, Miss Virelli? She smiled faintly. My father always said exclusive contracts were more valuable, less competition, higher profit margins. I was curious. Your father was in shipping? Thornbury leaned forward, suddenly interested. He was. Then perhaps you understand the complexities of international trade better than most ladies. The condescension in his voice made her want to throw her wine in his face. Instead, she ducked her head. I only remember bits and pieces. His business was quite complicated. Indeed. Victor's voice cut through the politeness like a blade. Though I'm sure your father would be proud to know you're safe and well cared for. These matters can be terribly dangerous for someone in your position. Threat, clear as day. Adrian's hand clenched on his fork. Miss Virelli's safety is ensured, cousin. You needn't concern yourself. Of course not. Victor raised his glass again. To safety, then, and to knowing one's place. The second course arrived, breaking the tension. Elena focused on her plate, pulse hammering. She'd pushed too hard, asked too many questions. Victor was suspicious now, and that made everything more dangerous. But she'd also learned something crucial. The numbers didn't add up. 3,000 pounds profit on a single shipment of wool? Even premium Scottish wool wouldn't command those prices. Not in a market as established as Rotterdam's textile trade, which meant either the cargo wasn't wool or the profit was coming from somewhere else entirely. As the dinner dragged on, roast pheasant, potatoes, endless wine, Elena listened to Thornbury and Webb paint pictures of expanding empires and unlimited returns. Victor added technical details about shipping routes and warehouse capacity. Elias played the charming middleman, smoothing over any awkward moments with jokes and refills. And through it all, Adrian said almost nothing. But she could feel the tension radiating off him. The way his shoulders stayed rigid, his jaw tight. He was holding himself back, probably afraid that if he started questioning, he wouldn't be able to stop. Finally, dessert was cleared and the men retired to the study for brandy and cigars. Elena, dismissed with the excuse of needing rest, allowed Anne to escort her upstairs. But instead of going to her room, she waited in the hallway until Anne's footsteps faded. Then she slipped back down the servants' staircase, moving silently through the darkened corridors toward the study. The door was closed but not latched. Through the gap she could hear voices, raised now, the social veneer stripped away. Told you to keep her away from business discussions, Victor was saying, anger sharpening each word. That blind little mouse asking about cargo manifests and exclusive contracts. She was being polite, Adrian shot back, making conversation. She was asking questions she shouldn't know to ask. A pause. Then Victor's voice, lower and more dangerous. Who is she really, Adrian? What game is Pemberton playing? No game. She's exactly who she says she is. A helpless heiress running from her father's creditors? Victor laughed, bitter and sharp. And you believe that? You, who trust no one? I trust Pemberton. Pemberton is old and sentimental. He sees a damsel in distress and sends her to you because he knows you'll play the noble protector. But what if she's not what she seems? What if she's a spy? Someone sent to investigate our affairs? Elena's blood went cold. That's paranoid even for you, Elias drawled. The girl can't even see. What exactly is she going to investigate? I don't know. Victor's voice dropped to something almost contemplative. But I intend to find out. Elena didn't wait to hear more. She slipped back through the corridors, heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. He knows, she thought frantically. He suspects. And if he starts digging into my past, if he contacts my father's old business partners, the lie would crumble. everything would crumble. She made it back to her room and locked the door with shaking hands. Then she stood in the darkness, trying to breathe, trying to think. 3 years. She'd survived 3 years by being invisible, unthreatening, beneath notice. But here at Blackthorn, she was anything but invisible. Adrian trusted her, needed her help, and every instinct screamed that his cousins were running a scheme that would destroy him if she didn't intervene. But intervening meant risk, meant exposure, meant potentially losing the only safe harbor she'd found in 3 years of running. A soft knock made her jump. "Miss Virelli?" Adrian's voice, quiet through the door. "May I speak with you?" Elena unlocked the door with trembling fingers. He stood in the hallway, still in his dinner clothes, looking worse than he had that morning. "I'm sorry," he said immediately. "About Victor's behavior tonight. He was inexcusably rude." "It's all right." "It's not." Adrian stepped inside, then seemed to catch himself. "May I?" She nodded, gesturing to the sitting room. He closed the door behind him but stayed near it, keeping distance between them. "You were brilliant at dinner," he said quietly. "Those questions you asked about exclusive contracts and cargo details, they were exactly what I should have been asking for months. I shouldn't have spoken. I made him suspicious. Victor's always suspicious. It's his nature." Adrian's expression hardened. "But you were right to question the numbers. I've been going over the documentation he's provided, and there are gaps. Large ones. Shipment records that don't match customs declarations. Profit margins that don't align with market rates." Elena's mind raced. "How large are the gaps?" "Nearly 15,000 pounds over the last 6 months. Her breath caught. That wasn't creative accounting. That was theft. "What will you do?" she asked. "I don't know." He looked at her, and the vulnerability in his eyes made her chest ache. "If I confront him without proof, he'll destroy whatever evidence exists. But if I wait too long, he'll move the money somewhere I can't recover it. The estate is already leveraged because of my father's debts. If Victor's stolen that much..." He didn't finish. He didn't have to. Blackthorn would be ruined. The tenants who depended on the estate, the staff who lived here, all of it would collapse. Elena knew she should stay silent, knew she should offer sympathy and nothing more. But the words came out anyway. "Let me help you." Adrian blinked. "What?" "Let me help you find proof." She took a step toward him, forgetting for a moment to keep her gaze unfocused. "I know business records. I know what to look for. If Victor's hiding something, it'll be in the documentation. Irregular entries, falsified invoices, shell company transfers. Things he thinks no one will notice." "You can't..." Adrian stopped, shaking his head. "Miss Virelli, you're blind. How would you even access the records?" The lie sat on her tongue, heavy and bitter. "Tell him," something whispered. "Tell him the truth. He'll understand. He's kind and decent and he needs your help." But Victor's words echoed louder. "What if she's a spy? Someone sent to investigate our affairs? If she revealed her deception now, Adrian might believe the same thing, might think she'd been playing him from the start." "I could listen," she said instead, hating herself. "You could read the documents aloud. I'll tell you what sounds wrong." It was weak. They both knew it. But Adrian was desperate enough to grab at any solution. "All right," he said slowly. "Victor keeps copies in his office. If I can get access while he's away..." He met her eyes, and something shifted in his expression. Determination, maybe, or the beginning of recklessness. "There's a dinner in the village tomorrow night, a harvest celebration. The whole household is expected to attend. But Victor will be there. He never misses a chance to play the benevolent landlord." Adrian's jaw set. "It's the best opportunity we'll have." Elena nodded, even as every survival instinct screamed at her to refuse, to pack her things and disappear into the night before this whole situation exploded. But she didn't, because somewhere between walking in those rain-soaked gardens and sitting through that tense dinner, Duke Adrian Hale had stopped being a convenient protector and become something far more dangerous. He'd become someone she cared about. "Tomorrow night, then," she whispered. Adrian reached out like he might touch her hand, then stopped himself. "Thank you for trusting me with this." "I'm not the one you should trust," Elena thought, but all she said was, "Be careful." After he left, she stood at the window and stared out at the dark grounds. Somewhere out there, Victor was plotting, planning, probably already taking steps to secure whatever scheme he was running. And tomorrow night, she and Adrian would walk straight into his web. The smart thing would be to run, but Elena Virelli had been running for 3 years. Maybe it was time to stand and fight instead, even if the cost was everything she'd been trying to protect. The next day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Elena stayed in her room mostly, claiming a headache to avoid questions. Anne brought meals and fussed over her, worried, and Elena felt like the worst kind of fraud. At 4 in the afternoon, a note arrived. Adrian's handwriting, neat and precise. The office is on the 2nd floor, west wing, 3rd door on the left. I'll create a distraction at 7 to ensure Victor leaves early for the village. You'll have 30 minutes, perhaps less. Be careful. Elena burned the note in her fireplace and watched the paper curl into ash. 30 minutes to search an office, find evidence of financial crimes, and get out without being caught. She'd done worse. The village celebration began at 6:30. From her window, Elena watched the staff depart in a cheerful procession. Mrs. Brennan, Thomas the groundskeeper, Anne, and the other maids all dressed in their best. Laughter drifted up through the twilight. At 6:45, she heard Victor's voice in the hall below, calling for his coat. At 7 precisely, Adrian knocked on her door. "Ready?" he asked quietly. Elena nodded, her heart hammering. They moved through the darkened hallways like thieves. The estate felt cavernous and empty without the usual bustle of staff. Their footsteps echoed on hardwood, too loud in the silence. The west wing was colder than the rest of the house. Elena could feel the temperature drop as they climbed the stairs, could smell dust and old paper and something else. Tobacco, maybe, or expensive cologne. "Here," Adrian whispered, stopping at a door identical to all the others. "It's locked, but I have keys." He fumbled with a ring of them, metal clinking softly. Once, twice, then a click. The door swung open. Victor's office was surprisingly sparse. A large desk dominated the center, its surface neat almost to the point of obsession. File cabinets lined one wall. A safe sat in the corner, black metal gleaming. "Where do we start?" Adrian asked, already moving toward the desk. "The files," Elena said, dropping the helpless act. "No point in pretending now. Look for anything related to the Rotterdam venture. Contracts, invoices, correspondence." He stared at her, really stared, as she crossed directly to the file cabinets without hesitation, without fumbling. "You can see," he said flatly. Elena froze. Then, slowly, she turned to face him. "Yes." The word hung between them like a blade. Adrian's expression went through a dozen emotions in as many seconds: shock, confusion, hurt, anger, finally landing on something that looked dangerously close to betrayal. "How long?" "The whole time," Elena admitted. "I'm not blind, I never was." "Then why—" He stopped, jaw working. "You lied to me. From the very beginning, you lied." "I had to." The words came out desperate. "The men chasing me, they thought a blind woman was useless, no threat. It was the only way to stay safe. So you deceived everyone, me included. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice." Adrian's voice was cold now, all the warmth burned away. "You chose to manipulate me, to make me feel—" He cut himself off, turning away. "We need to find the evidence, then you're leaving, first thing tomorrow." The dismissal cut deeper than it should have. But he was right. She'd lied. She'd manipulated his kindness, his trust. She deserved his anger. Elena swallowed hard and opened the first file cabinet. Her hands shook as she flipped through folders, scanning dates and names. Nothing. 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 "Adrian," she said quietly, pulling out a folder marked Rotterdam Consortium. Contracts. "Look at this." He crossed to her side, careful not to touch, and took the folder. His eyes scanned the pages, and she watched his expression darken. "These signatures," he said slowly. "Half of them are forged. I've seen Thornbury's real signature. This isn't it. Keep looking. There has to be more." They worked in tense silence, pulling files, reading contracts, comparing documents. And slowly, horribly, the picture became clear. Victor hadn't just been skimming profits. He'd been running an elaborate shell game, creating false companies, routing money through non-existent ventures, then funneling it into accounts under different names. The Rotterdam consortium was real, but the investment numbers were inflated by nearly 40%. The missing £15,000 wasn't missing at all. It was in Victor's private accounts. "This is fraud," Adrian said, his voice hollow. "Large-scale, deliberate fraud. If I report this, he'll go to prison," Elena finished. "He's my cousin, my father's brother's son. He's stealing from you, from the estate, from everyone who depends on Blackthorn." Adrian's hands clenched on the documents. "I know, He closed his eyes. "I thought family meant something, even to him." Before Elena could respond, they heard it. Footsteps, coming up the stairs. Fast. "Someone's here," she whispered. Adrian shoved the files back into the cabinet, but there wasn't time to put everything back exactly as they'd found it. Elena grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the door, but it was too late. The footsteps stopped right outside. The doorknob began to turn. Elena's mind raced. No time to hide, no time to run. They were caught. The door opened. Elias stood in the doorway, still in his dinner clothes, a smile playing on his lips. "Well," he said softly, "isn't this interesting?" Elias leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, that perpetual smile still fixed in place. But his eyes were hard now, calculating. The charming facade had cracked just enough to show what lived underneath. "Breaking into Victor's office," he said conversationally. "Bold move, cousin. Though I have to say, I'm more impressed by your companion." His gaze slid to Elena. "The blind girl who can apparently see perfectly well. That's quite the trick." Adrian stepped in front of her, protective even now, even angry. "How long have you been watching?" "Long enough." Elias pushed off the doorframe and strolled into the room like he owned it. "I left the celebration early, had a feeling something interesting might happen tonight. Victor's been paranoid about the little mouse asking too many questions. And you, dear cousin, have been distracted for weeks. Didn't take a genius to put it together." "Then you know what we found," Adrian said flatly. "The fraud? The embezzlement?" Elias shrugged. "Known about it for months. Victor's not as clever as he thinks. He needed someone to help move the money through London accounts, and I was happy to oblige. For a percentage, of course." Elena's stomach dropped. Both cousins, both of them stealing from Adrian, from the estate. "You bastard," Adrian breathed. "Don't be dramatic, it's business." Elias plucked a folder from the desk, flipping through it casually. "Victor has vision. He saw an opportunity to build something bigger than this crumbling relic of a house. The estate's been bleeding money since your father died, you know that. We were just accelerating the inevitable. By stealing from me. By investing in ventures that actually have futures." Elias tossed the folder back down. "But now we have a problem. You two snooping around, finding evidence, probably planning to run straight to the authorities. That's unfortunate." Adrian's hand moved to his pocket, and Elena realized with a jolt that he was reaching for something. A weapon? Her pulse hammered. "You won't get away with this," Adrian said, his voice deadly calm. "I have the documentation. I have proof. Even if you destroy what's in this office, I can reconstruct enough to bury you both." "Maybe," Elias tilted his head, considering. "Or maybe we bury you first. Tragic accident. The Duke, overcome with financial stress, takes his own life. His grieving cousins inherit the estate, pay off his debts, and everyone moves on." "No one will believe that." "They will if we find your body in the morning with a suicide note in your own handwriting." Elias's smile widened. "Victor's very good at forgery. You noticed that, I assume." Elena's blood went cold. This wasn't just theft anymore. This was murder. She needed to do something. Say something, but her mind was racing too fast, panic clawing at her throat. Then Adrian moved. He lunged forward, faster than Elena would have thought possible, and his fist connected with Elias's jaw with a sickening crack. The younger man stumbled back, surprise flashing across his face. "Run!" Adrian shouted at her. "Elena, run!" But she couldn't. Her legs wouldn't move. She stood frozen as Elias recovered, wiping blood from his lip, fury replacing shock. "You're going to regret that, cousin." Elias charged. Adrian met him halfway, and they crashed into the desk in a tangle of limbs and violence. Papers scattered, a lamp shattered. Elena finally found her voice and screamed, wordless and terrified, hoping someone, anyone, might hear. But the estate was empty. Everyone at the celebration, no one to help. She grabbed the nearest heavy object, a brass bookend shaped like a horse, and swung it at Elias's head as he grappled with Adrian. It connected with his shoulder instead, not hard enough to stop him, but enough to make him curse and twist away. Adrian used the opening to shove Elias back, then grabbed Elena's wrist and pulled her toward the door. They ran. Down the corridor, Elias's footsteps pounding behind them. Adrian's grip on her wrist was iron tight, dragging her forward even when she stumbled. "The back stairs," he gasped. "We can get to the stables." Elias caught them at the landing. He slammed into Adrian from behind, and they both went down hard. Elena screamed again and kicked at Elias, her boot connecting with his ribs. He grunted, but didn't let go. "Little bitch," he snarled, grabbing her ankle. She fell, her head cracked against the floor, stars exploding across her vision. Through the ringing in her ears, she heard Adrian roar something, then more sounds of fighting. When her vision cleared, Adrian had Elias pinned against the wall, forearm across his throat. Blood streaked both their faces. "Where's Victor?" Adrian demanded. Elias laughed, choked and painful. "You think you've won? You think this is over?" "Where is he?" "Coming." Elias's eyes gleamed with malicious triumph. "I sent word before I came upstairs. He'll be here any moment, and when he arrives, your little mouse is going to wish she'd stayed blind." Adrian's grip tightened. "If you touch her—" "You'll what? Kill me?" Elias spat blood. "You don't have it in you, cousin. You're too noble, too good. That's always been your weakness." Footsteps echoed from somewhere below. Heavy. Deliberate. Victor. Adrian released Elias and turned to Elena, hauling her to her feet. "Can you walk?" She nodded, head still spinning. "Then we go. Now." They ran again, this time toward the servants' quarters. Adrian seemed to know every turn, every shortcut. He pulled her through a narrow door she hadn't even known existed, into a stairwell that smelled like dust and old stone. "Where are we going?" Elena panted. "The groundskeeper's cottage. Thomas keeps a horse there. We can ride to the village, get help." "Adrian, stop." He did, turning to look at her in the dim light filtering through a high window. His face was bruised, bleeding, but his eyes were fierce. "We can't run from this," Elena said, trying to catch her breath. "They'll follow us. And even if we make it to the village, what then? It's our word against theirs. They'll destroy the evidence while we're gone." "Then what do you suggest?" Elena's mind raced. Every instinct screamed to run, to disappear into the night like she'd done so many times before. But running meant leaving Adrian to face this alone, meant watching from a distance as Victor and Elias destroyed him, and she was so tired of running. "We need proof they can't destroy," she said slowly. "A confession. Witnesses. Something undeniable." "How?" An idea formed, reckless and dangerous. "Victor thinks I'm helpless, blind, weak. What if we use that?" Adrian stared at her. "You want to confront him." "I want to make him think he's won, that we're cornered. Men like Victor, they love to gloat. They can't help themselves." Her hands were shaking, but her voice stayed steady. "If we can get him talking, get him to admit what he's done with witnesses present, the staff won't be back for hours. Then we bring the authorities to him." Elena met his eyes. "The village has a constable, doesn't it? Thomas Weeks. He's at the celebration. So we go there, but not to hide, to bring him back. Tell him the Duke of Blackthorn requests his presence for an urgent matter. He'll come. And while we're gone, Victor destroys everything. Not if we take the evidence with us." Elena grabbed his arm. "The files we found. We take them, we get the constable, we come back with legal authority. Victor and Elias can't refuse to answer questions from the law, and if they try to run, it proves guilt." Adrian was quiet for a long moment, thinking it through. Then he nodded. "It's risky. Everything's risky now. If this goes wrong, it won't." Elena squeezed his arm, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. "Trust me, His expression twisted. That's hard to do right now. The words hit like a slap. Deserved, but painful. I know, she whispered. I know I lied to you, but I'm telling the truth now. I want to help you. I want to stop them. Why? What do you get out of this? Because you're kind. Because you treated me like a person when everyone else saw a burden. Because somewhere in the last week, you became someone I couldn't bear to lose. But she couldn't say any of that. Not now, maybe not ever. Because it's the right thing to do, she said instead. Adrian searched her face for a long moment. Then he sighed. All right, we try it your way. But if anything goes wrong, you run. You don't look back, you don't try to help me, you just run. Promise me. Adrian, promise me, Elena. The use of her first name sent a shock through her. She nodded. I promise. They made their way back to Victor's office, moving slowly, listening for any sign of the cousins. The estate was eerily quiet now. Too quiet. The office door still stood open. Inside, papers were scattered from the fight, but the file cabinets remained intact. Adrian quickly gathered the most damning documents while Elena kept watch. Got them, he whispered, shoving papers into a leather satchel. Let's go. They were halfway down the hallway when Victor's voice stopped them cold. Going somewhere? He stood at the top of the main staircase, blocking their path. Elias emerged from a side corridor behind them, cutting off retreat. They were trapped. Victor looked immaculate despite the late hour, not a hair out of place, but his eyes were ice. Did you really think I wouldn't have contingencies, cousin? That I wouldn't prepare for the possibility of discovery? It's over, Victor, Adrian said, holding up the satchel. I have everything. The false contracts, the shell companies, the account transfers. You're finished. Am I? Victor descended the stairs slowly, each step measured. Those documents prove nothing without context. Any magistrate will see them as legitimate business transactions. My word against yours, and I'm afraid mine carries rather more weight these days. You're stealing from the estate. I'm investing estate funds in profitable ventures. There's a difference. Victor stopped a few paces away, hands clasped behind his back. Your problem, Adrian, is that you're too sentimental. You see theft where I see opportunity. You see betrayal where I see necessary evolution. You're a thief and a liar. And you're a failure. Victor's voice cut like glass. Your father nearly bankrupted this estate with his drinking and his gambling. You've spent 5 years trying to fix his mistakes, pouring money into land that barely produces enough to pay the tenants' wages. Meanwhile, I've generated more income in 18 months than you have in 5 years. I've saved Blackthorn, cousin. Not you. Adrian's jaw clenched. By stealing. By being smart. By understanding that the world doesn't reward honor, it rewards results. Victor's gaze shifted to Elena. And speaking of deception, let's discuss your little house guest. The blind heiress who's been playing us all for fools. Elena forced herself to meet his eyes. I don't know what you mean. Don't you? Victor smiled, cold and terrible. Elias told me about your miraculous recovery, how you ran through the corridors with perfect vision, how you fought him without hesitation. Quite remarkable, really. She's been running from dangerous men, Adrian said. The blindness was protection. Or it was a lie to gain access to this house, to spy on us. Victor took another step closer. Tell me, Miss Virelli, who sent you? Which of my competitors paid you to infiltrate Blackthorn? No one sent me. I don't believe you. I don't care what you believe. The words came out sharper than she'd intended. Victor's expression darkened. You should care, he said softly, because right now, the only thing keeping you alive is my cousin's misguided sense of honor. But Adrian's protection only extends so far, especially when he learns the full truth about you. Elena's stomach twisted. There is no truth, I told you. Your father didn't just run a shipping company, Victor interrupted. He ran a smuggling operation, weapons mostly, sometimes opium. He made his fortune moving illegal cargo through ports he'd bribed into complacency. And when he died, his business partners came looking for their share. That's what you're really running from, isn't it? Not creditors. Criminals. The air left Elena's lungs. How did he know? How could he possibly? Adrian turned to stare at her. Is that true? I. Her throat closed. My father's business was complicated. Was he a smuggler? The question hung between them like a noose. Elena could lie, should lie, but she was so tired of lies. Yes, she whispered. Adrian's face went blank. Not angry, not hurt, just empty. I didn't know, she said desperately. Not until after he died. I found records, correspondence. By then it was too late. His partners thought I knew where he'd hidden the profits from their last shipment. They wanted it back. How much? Adrian asked, his voice flat. 30,000 pounds. And do you know where it is? No, I swear I have no idea. But they didn't believe me. That's why I ran. That's why I've been hiding. Victor clapped slowly, mockingly. What a touching confession. The innocent daughter, victim of her father's sins. Except you're not innocent, are you, Miss Virelli? You knew enough to pose as blind. You knew enough to hide for 3 years. You knew enough to worm your way into Adrian's trust and use him as a shield against men far more dangerous than my cousin will ever be. That's not, isn't it? Victor's smile was vicious. You're a liar and a manipulator. You used Adrian's kindness against him. You used this household. And now you have the audacity to stand there and accuse me of deception? Elena looked at Adrian, desperate for him to say something, anything, but he just stared at her like he was seeing a stranger. Adrian, she tried. Please, I know I should have told you, but I was afraid. You were afraid I'd throw you out, he finished, his voice hollow. So you lied. About everything. Not everything. The danger was real. My fear was real. But nothing else was. He looked away. Not the helplessness, not the trust, not... He stopped himself. Not the connection between them. The almost friendship, the moments of quiet understanding, all of it built on lies. I'm sorry, Elena whispered. So am I. Victor cleared his throat. How moving. But we still have the matter of what to do with both of you. The documents, the accusations, the rather inconvenient fact that you now know far too much about my business arrangements. Elias moved closer, backing them toward the wall. I still think the suicide plan has merit. Too obvious now, Victor said dismissively. Besides, I have a better idea, one that solves multiple problems at once. He pulled something from his jacket pocket, an envelope sealed with red wax. This, he said, is a letter to several of your father's former business partners, Miss Virelli, men I've recently made contact with, men who would be very interested to know your current location. I'm sure they'd pay handsomely for that information. Elena's blood turned to ice. You wouldn't, Adrian said. I would, unless of course you both agree to my terms. What terms? Victor's smile widened. Simple. You sign papers transferring control of the estate's finances to me. Full legal authority over all accounts and investments. In exchange, I don't send this letter. Miss Virelli gets to keep breathing, and you get to keep playing at being Duke. Everyone wins. Except you'll bankrupt the estate within a year. Possibly, but that's not your concern anymore, is it? Adrian's hands clenched into fists. Elena could see him calculating, trying to find a way out. But there wasn't one. Not without risking her life. Don't, she said quietly. Don't give him what he wants because of me. I'm not letting him hand you over to smugglers. I've survived this long. I'll survive whatever comes next. Not against men like that, you won't. Victor laughed. How noble. The failed duke and the lying heiress united in their righteousness. It's almost poetic. He pulled out another paper, a contract already prepared. You have until dawn to decide. Sign this or I send the letter. Your choice. He set the contract on a small table and turned to leave. Elias followed, still wearing that hateful smirk. At the top of the stairs, Victor paused. Oh, and don't bother trying to leave. I've posted men at every exit. Former soldiers, very loyal, very well paid. You're not going anywhere. Then they were gone, footsteps echoing into silence. Elena and Adrian stood in the empty hallway, the contract sitting between them like a curse. I'm sorry, Elena said again. It felt inadequate. Useless. Adrian didn't look at her. Were you ever going to tell me the truth? I don't know. Maybe. Eventually. That's not good enough. I know. He finally met her eyes, and the pain in his gaze made her chest ache. I trusted you. I let you in. I thought... He shook his head. It doesn't matter what I thought. It matters to me. Why? Because you need my protection? Because I'm convenient? Because you're kind, Elena said, the words tumbling out. Because you're good and decent and everything I needed to believe still existed in this world. Because when you looked at me, I didn't feel like a burden or a target or a liability. I felt like a person. And I'm sorry I lied. I'm sorry I manipulated you, but that feeling, that was real. That was never a lie. Adrian's expression cracked, just slightly. I don't know what to believe anymore. Then don't believe me. Don't trust me. But don't give Victor what he wants. Don't sacrifice Blackthorn because I made mistakes. He'll send the letter. Let him. I'll run again. I'm good at it. For how long? How long before they catch you? Elena had no answer, because they both knew the truth. Eventually, her luck would run out. Eventually, the men hunting her would find her, and when they did... There has to be another way, Adrian said, more to himself than to her. There isn't. You can't fight them both and protect me at the same time. You have to choose. I'm not choosing between you and the estate. Then choose the estate. Choose the people who depend on it. I'm just one person, Adrian. There are dozens. Hundreds if you count the village. He turned away, running both hands through his hair. I need to think. We don't have time. I said I need to think. The shout echoed in the empty space. Elena flinched back. Adrian immediately looked stricken. I'm sorry. I didn't mean... I'm not angry at you. I'm angry at them. At this whole situation. I know. No, you don't. He laughed, bitter and broken. Because if you did, you'd understand that I can't just let you walk into danger. I can't. Even knowing what I know, even with the lies, He stopped himself again. Elena's heart hammered. You what? It doesn't matter. Adrian? A noise from below cut her off. Voices. Multiple people entering the estate. They both froze. The staff's back, Adrian whispered. The celebration must have ended early. Hope flared in Elena's chest. Then we can tell them. Expose Victor in front of witnesses. With what proof? He has the documents locked away now, and his men are everywhere. If we try to speak out, he'll just claim we're hysterical, that you've been manipulating me. Then we take the risk. Footsteps on the stairs. Multiple sets. Victor's voice rang out, cheerful and loud. Mrs. Brennan, excellent timing. I need you to send for Dr. Morrison immediately. The housekeeper's worried response. Is someone hurt, sir? I'm afraid my cousin has had a terrible shock. He's discovered that his house guest has been lying to him about her identity, her condition, everything. The betrayal has affected him quite badly. Elena's blood ran cold. What's he doing? She whispered. Adrian's face had gone white. He's going to claim I'm unstable, that I can't be trusted to make decisions. More voices now, staff gathering, concerned and confused. Victor continued his performance. Miss Virelli has confessed to being a fraud, a criminal, in fact. Her father was a smuggler, and dangerous men are hunting her. She's brought that danger to our doorstep, and my cousin, in his distress, is threatening to do something rash. That's not true, Adrian called out, moving toward the stairs. But Victor was faster. He appeared at the landing with Elias and 3 large men Elena didn't recognize, the guards he'd mentioned probably. You see? Victor said sadly, gesturing to Adrian. Overwrought. Irrational. He needs rest and medical care. Please, help him to his chambers. The guards moved forward. Adrian backed up, putting himself between them and Elena. Stay away from me. Cousin, you're not well. I'm fine. You're the one who's sick. You're a thief and a liar. He's becoming violent, Victor announced to the gathering staff. Restrain him before he hurts himself or Miss Virelli. The guards lunged. Adrian fought, but there were 3 of them, and they were trained. Within seconds, they had him pinned, arms wrenched behind his back. Let him go, Elena screamed, trying to pull them off. One of the guards shoved her away. She hit the wall hard, head ringing. "Take him to his rooms," Victor ordered. "Lock the door. No visitors until the doctor arrives." "You can't do this," Adrian struggled against the grip. "I'm the Duke." "You're unwell, cousin, but don't worry. I'll take care of everything until you recover. The estate, the staff, and your dangerous little friend." They dragged Adrian away, still fighting, still shouting. Elena tried to follow, but Elias caught her arm. "Not so fast, darling." Mrs. Brennan stood at the bottom of the stairs, face pale and confused. "Mr. Victor, I don't understand. What's happening?" "A family matter, Mrs. Brennan. Nothing to concern yourself with." Victor descended the stairs with practiced ease, every inch the concerned relative. "Miss Virelli will be leaving in the morning. I've already made arrangements for her transport." "Transport where?" Elena demanded, jerking against Elias's grip. Victor smiled. "Back to your father's friends, of course. I sent the letter an hour ago. They should arrive by dawn." The world tilted. An hour ago. While they'd been planning, arguing, confessing, he'd already betrayed her. "You bastard," she breathed. "Business, Miss Virelli. Just business." He turned to the housekeeper. "Have a room prepared for our guest, something secure. We wouldn't want her attempting anything foolish before her friends arrive." Mrs. Brennan looked between them, uncertainty written all over her face. "Sir, if His Grace objects, His Grace is in no condition to object to anything. I'm acting in his best interests and the estate's. Now please, do as I ask." The housekeeper hesitated one more second, then nodded and hurried away. Elena realized with sinking horror that no one was going to help. The staff trusted Victor. They'd seen Adrian shouting, seen him struggling against the guards. They thought he was having some kind of breakdown, and she was the cause. "Come along," Elias said, dragging her toward the stairs. "Let's get you settled for your last night at Blackthorn." She fought every step, but he was stronger and she was already bruised from earlier. He pulled her down the corridor to a small room, servants' quarters probably. Sparse furniture, barred window, a cell. He shoved her inside and locked the door behind her. "Pleasant dreams, Miss Virelli," he called through the wood. "What's left of them anyway?" Then his footsteps faded and Elena was alone. She ran to the window first, but the bars were solid and the drop was 3 stories. Even if she broke the glass, she'd never make it. The door was thick oak, lock-heavy, and well-made. No picking it with hairpins or clever tricks. She was trapped, and in a few hours, the men who'd been hunting her for 3 years would arrive to collect her. Men who thought she knew where 30,000 pounds in stolen money was hidden. Men who would do anything to make her talk. Men who wouldn't believe her when she said she didn't know. Elena sank onto the narrow bed, head in her hands, and tried not to scream. She'd survived 3 years. 3 years of running, hiding, lying, and it was all going to end here. Because she'd trusted the wrong person. Because she'd let her guard down. Because somewhere along the way, she'd stopped just surviving and started hoping for something more. A soft sound made her look up, scratching, at the window. She crossed to it cautiously. Outside, in the darkness, a face appeared. Young, familiar, Anne. The maid was balanced precariously on a ladder, pressing a folded note against the glass. Elena's hand shook as she opened the window as far as the bars allowed. "What are you doing?" "His Grace sent me," Anne whispered. "Before they locked him in, he said to give you this and to tell you he's sorry." She pushed the note through the bars. Elena unfolded it with trembling fingers. Adrian's handwriting, hasty and smudged. "I won't let them take you. Whatever happens, trust that I'm coming. Wait for my signal." "What signal?" Elena asked desperately. But Anne was already descending the ladder, disappearing into the night. Elena pressed her forehead against the cold bars and clutched the note like a lifeline. Dawn was 3 hours away. 3 hours until the smugglers arrived. 3 hours for Adrian to somehow escape his locked room, overpower Victor's guards, and stage a rescue he had no way of pulling off. It was impossible. But as Elena stood in that locked room, bruised and terrified and alone, she realized something. She was tired of impossible odds, tired of running, tired of being the victim in her own story. If Adrian was coming, she'd meet him halfway. And if he wasn't, if this was just false hope, then she'd fight anyway. She'd spent 3 years hiding behind weakness, Time to remember that she was her father's daughter. And her father, criminal or not, had never gone down without a fight. Elena had maybe 2 hours before dawn. 2 hours to figure out how to break out of a locked room, avoid Victor's guards, and somehow get proof that would hold up against whatever lies he'd already spread. Impossible. But she'd done impossible before. She started with the room itself. Small, sparse. A servant's quarters like she'd thought. Narrow bed, washstand, single chair. The window had iron bars set deep into the stone, immovable. The door was solid oak with a lock that wouldn't budge when she tested it, but the walls were old plaster over lath. She could hear voices through them if she pressed her ear close, distant, muffled, but there, which meant sound traveled both ways. Elena dragged the chair to the wall adjoining what she guessed was another servant's room. She climbed onto it and knocked. 3 short raps. Pause. 3 more. Nothing. She tried again, harder this time. An answering knock came back, hesitant, confused. "Anne?" Elena called softly, mouth close to the plaster. "Is that you?" A long pause, then, "Miss Virelli?" Relief flooded through her. "Anne, I need your help." "I can't. Mr. Victor said no one's to speak with you. He'll sack me if he finds out. He's lying about his grace, about me. Everything he told Mrs. Brennan was a lie." Silence. Then, "I know." Elena's breath caught. "You know?" His grace would never act like Mr. Victor described. "And you," Anne's voice dropped even lower, "you were kind to me, real kind. That doesn't come from someone dangerous. Then help me get out of here, please." "I don't have a key. Mr. Victor took all the spares." Elena's mind raced. "Can you get to His Grace's room? Is he locked in?" "Yes, 2 guards outside his door." "What about the window?" "3rd floor, miss. There's no way down without—" Anne stopped. "The trellis. There's an old trellis on the east side. It's not safe. Hasn't been used in years, but it's a way down." Elena felt hope kindle. "Can you get a message to him? Tell him about the trellis?" "I'll try. But miss, even if he gets out, Mr. Victor has men everywhere. And those men coming for you at dawn—" "I know, which is why we need to move fast." Elena pressed her palm against the plaster like she could reach through it. "And in His Grace's study, there's a locked drawer in his desk, the keys in the blue vase on the mantel. Inside that drawer are papers, documents about the Rotterdam venture. We need those papers." "I can't read business documents, miss." "You don't have to. Just get them to the village, to Constable Weeks. Tell him the Duke of Blackthorn requests his immediate presence. Tell him lives are at stake." Anne was quiet for so long Elena thought she'd left. Then, "They'll dismiss me. Or worse." "I know, I'm asking anyway." Another pause, then softly, "His Grace gave my father a job when no one else would. Fixed our barn. Paid for my sister's medicine when she had the fever." Anne's voice strengthened. "I'll do it. For him. And for you, miss." "Thank you. Be careful." "You too." The connection went quiet. Elena climbed down from the chair and started searching the room more carefully. She needed a weapon. Something, anything she could use if, when, things went wrong. The washstand was bolted to the wall. The bed frame was too heavy to move quietly. But the chair was wooden, old, joints loose from years of use. Elena wedged it against the floor and stomped hard on one leg. The wood cracked. Another stomp and it splintered free. A rough club maybe 2 feet long, jagged on one end. Not much, but better than nothing. She tucked it under the mattress and sat on the bed to wait, Adrian's note clutched in her hand. "Wait for my signal." What signal? How would she know? Minutes crawled by. Elena's mind wouldn't stop racing, running through scenarios, contingencies, all the ways this could go catastrophically wrong. If Adrian didn't make it out, she was alone. If the constable didn't believe Anne, there'd be no help coming. If Victor's men caught her trying to escape, she forced herself to breathe. In, out, steady. Footsteps in the hallway made her freeze. Heavy boots. Multiple people. They stopped outside her door. "Open it," Victor's voice commanded. The lock clicked. Elena barely had time to shove the broken chair leg back under the mattress before the door swung wide. Victor stood in the doorway with Elias and 2 guards. His expression was pleasant, almost friendly. Somehow that made it worse. "I wanted to check on our guest," he said, stepping inside. "Make sure you were comfortable for your last few hours at Blackthorn." Elena stayed on the bed, spine straight, meeting his gaze. "Go to hell," he laughed, spirited to the end. "I respect that." He crossed to the window, testing the bars. "Don't worry, your friends will be here soon. I'm sure they'll be delighted to see you." "They're not my friends." "No? Well, they paid handsomely for your location. £5,000 to be exact. Not quite the 30,000 they think you're hiding, but a reasonable finder's fee." Elena's stomach turned. 5,000. He'd sold her for £5,000. "Adrian will stop you," she said. "Adrian is locked in his room, sedated. Dr. Morrison was very understanding when I explained the situation. He's given my cousin something to help him rest." Victor's smile widened. "By the time the drugs wear off, you'll be long gone, and he'll have no proof of anything, just the word of a confessed liar against mine. The staff heard him. They know their Duke was distraught over a woman's betrayal. It happens. Tragic, but understandable." He turned back to her. "You really should have stayed blind, Miss Virelli. It would have been safer for everyone. Especially you." "Especially me," he agreed. "But you had to start asking questions. Had to convince Adrian to investigate. And now look where we are." Elias leaned against the doorframe, watching the exchange with lazy interest. "You know what I find fascinating? How long you managed to fool everyone. 3 years of playing helpless. That takes commitment." "It takes survival," Elena shot back. "Same thing sometimes." Elias pushed off the frame. "But it's over now. Your father's partners are bringing 30 men, armed men. Even if Adrian somehow escapes and rallies the staff, they won't stand a chance." Victor checked his pocket watch. "Dawn in 90 minutes. I suggest you make peace with whatever you need to make peace with." He gestured to the guards. They filed out, boots heavy on the floorboards. Victor paused at the threshold. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "I didn't want it to come to this. If you just stayed quiet, played your part, you could have lived here safely, but you had to be clever. Better clever than a coward." Something flickered in his eyes, anger, maybe, or grudging respect. Then he smiled. "We'll see." The door slammed shut. The lock clicked. Elena sat in the darkness, breathing hard, fury and fear warring in her chest. 90 minutes. She grabbed the chair leg from under the mattress and moved to the door, pressing her ear against the wood. Footsteps fading. Voices distant. At least one guard posted outside, probably more at the end of the hallway. She tested the lock again, still solid. Tried to wedge the chair leg into the gap between door and frame, but there wasn't enough space. Think. Her father had been a smuggler. Not a good man, maybe, but a clever one. He taught her things before he died. How to read people, how to spot lies, how to find escape routes. "Every room has 2 ways out," he told her once. "Door and window are obvious, but smart people look for the 3rd way, the one no one else sees." Elena scanned the room again. Door, locked, window, barred. What was the 3rd way? Her eyes landed on the plaster wall, old, crumbling in places, and Anne was on the other side. It was crazy, completely insane. But so was everything else about tonight. Elena grabbed the chair leg and started digging at the plaster where it met the floor. The material was old, brittle. It crumbled under pressure. She worked faster, carving away chunks, exposing the wooden lath beneath. The lath was thin, meant to hold plaster, not stand up to force. She wedged the chair leg between 2 slats and pried. One cracked. Another. The sound seemed deafening in the small room. She froze, listening. No footsteps, no shouts. Elena kept going, ripping away lath, enlarging the hole. Splinters bit into her hands. Sweat dripped down her spine despite the cold. After what felt like hours, but was probably 15 minutes, she'd created an opening maybe 18 inches across, barely big enough to fit through. She'd have to try anyway. Elena knocked on the wall again. "Anne, are you there?" Rustling sounds, then Anne's voice, closer now. Miss, what are you doing? Breaking through. I need you to make the same hole on your side. With what? Good question. Anything you can find, hurry. More sounds, then the thunk of something hitting plaster. Anne was using something, a poker from the fireplace maybe, or a heavy book. The plaster on her side started crumbling. Elena worked from her end, pulling away debris, trying to stay quiet. Finally, she could see through. Anne's pale face appeared in the gap, streaked with dust. I can't make it any bigger, the girl whispered. The lath won't break. It's enough. Move back. Elena squeezed through the opening feet first, scraping her shoulders, her hips. For one horrible moment, she thought she was stuck, wedged between walls. Then Anne grabbed her ankles and pulled, and she tumbled through onto Anne's floor in a shower of plaster dust. Are you hurt? Anne asked. Elena's hands were bleeding, her dress torn, but she shook her head. I'm fine. Did you get the papers? Anne pointed to a bundle on her bed, wrapped in cloth. And I sent Thomas to the village. He'll bring the constable. What about his grace? I tried to get to his room, but the guards... Anne's face crumpled. I'm sorry, miss. I couldn't get past them. Elena grabbed the girl's shoulders. You did more than enough. More than I had any right to ask. Now you need to hide. Go to the village with Thomas. Don't come back until this is over. But you... I'll be fine. Go. Please. Anne hesitated, then threw her arms around Elena in a quick, fierce hug. Good luck, miss. Then she was gone, slipping out into the darkened hallway. Elena grabbed the bundle of papers and the chair leg she'd brought with her. Her makeshift weapon felt pathetic now, but it was all she had. She needed to find Adrian, needed to get him out before Victor's men realized she'd escaped. The estate was quiet, too quiet for the hour before dawn. Elena moved through the servants' corridors, every sense straining. She knew the layout now, had memorized it during her first week. Adrian's chambers were in the north wing, 3rd floor. She climbed the back stairs slowly, testing each step before putting weight on it. At the landing, voices made her freeze. Should check on him again. Make sure he's still out. Victor said to leave him until the woman's gone. Don't want him making a scene. 2 guards. Right outside Adrian's door, Elena pressed herself against the wall, mind racing. She couldn't fight them both, couldn't sneak past. What she needed was a distraction. Her eyes fell on a decorative table nearby, heavy marble vase sitting on top, ugly and probably expensive. She grabbed it, hefted it, then lobbed it down the hallway in the opposite direction. It hit the floor with a spectacular crash. The guards jumped. What the hell? Go check it out. I'll stay here. Both of us should. Victor said someone always watches the door. You go. I'll wait. Footsteps running away. 1 guard left. Elena waited until she couldn't hear the other guard anymore, then stepped around the corner. The remaining guard was young, nervous-looking. His hand went to his belt when he saw her. Stop right there. Elena raised her hands, still clutching the chair leg. I just want to see him. 5 minutes, that's all. Can't do that, miss. Orders. Please, they're taking me away at dawn. I just want to say goodbye. The guard's expression softened slightly. I'm sorry, really, but Mr. Victor was clear. Elena swung the chair leg at his head. She'd never hit anyone before. Didn't know how hard was too hard. The wood connected with his temple with a sickening thud, and he dropped like a stone. For one horrible second, Elena thought she'd killed him. Then she saw his chest rise and fall. Unconscious, not dead. Thank everything. She grabbed his keys and fumbled with the lock. Her hands were shaking so badly it took 3 tries. Finally, the door swung open. Adrian's room was dark, curtains drawn. She could make out his form on the bed, still, too still. Adrian? She rushed to his side, dropping the chair leg. Adrian, wake up. He didn't move. She pressed her hand to his chest, heartbeat steady, breathing regular. Whatever Dr. Morrison had given him, it was strong. Come on, she whispered, shaking his shoulder. I need you to wake up, please. Nothing. Footsteps in the hallway. The other guard, coming back. Elena's pulse spiked. No time. She needed to get Adrian out now or they'd both be trapped. She grabbed a pitcher of water from the washstand and dumped it over his face. Adrian jerked awake with a gasp, eyes flying open. For a second, he just stared at her, confused and disoriented. Elena? We have to go, now. What? He tried to sit up, swayed. Can't. Everything's spinning. Fight through it. She pulled his arm over her shoulders, trying to haul him upright. They're coming. We're out of time. The door burst open. The guard she'd knocked out stood there, blood streaming down his face, furious. Behind him, 3 more guards appeared. Grab them. Elena shoved Adrian toward the window. The trellis. Anne said there's a trellis. Too dangerous. It's that or them. Adrian looked at the advancing guards, then at her. Decision crystallized in his eyes. He stumbled to the window and wrenched it open. Cold air rushed in. The trellis was there, ancient and covered in dead vines, clinging to the wall. It didn't look like it would hold a cat, much less 2 adults. You first, Adrian said. You can barely stand. Elena, go! She went, threw her leg over the sill and grabbed the trellis. The wood creaked ominously, but held. She climbed down as fast as she dared, splinters biting into her already injured hands. Above her, she heard Adrian grunting with effort, heard the guard shouting. Then his weight hit the trellis, and the whole structure shuddered. Hurry, she called up. Wood snapped. Adrian cursed. The trellis pulled away from the wall in one section, swinging them both outward. Elena clung desperately, feet scrabbling for purchase. They were still 10 feet up when the trellis gave way completely. They fell. Elena hit the ground hard, all the air slamming out of her lungs. Adrian landed beside her with a pained grunt. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Adrian rolled onto his side, reaching for her. Are you hurt? I don't know. Everything hurt, but she could move. That was something. You? I'll live. He pulled himself upright, still unsteady. Where are the papers? I dropped them. When I climbed, Elena looked around frantically. There, a few feet away, the cloth bundle had fallen. She grabbed it just as shouts erupted from the window above. They're getting away! Send men around! Adrian grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the gardens. They ran, stumbling over roots and through hedges. The drugs were still affecting him. Elena could feel it in his grip, the way he kept listing to one side. Where are we going? She gasped. Stable. We need horses. A figure stepped out from behind a tree, blocking their path. Elias, looking entirely too pleased with himself. Going somewhere? Adrian didn't slow. He lowered his shoulder and slammed into Elias like a battering ram. Both men went down in a tangle. Elena heard the impact, heard Elias's sharp exhale. Run! Adrian shouted at her, grappling with his cousin. But Elena didn't run. She grabbed a fallen branch, thicker than the chair leg, solid, and brought it down on Elias's back. He yelped and rolled away. Adrian surged up, fist connecting with Elias's jaw. Once, twice. The younger man went limp. I told you to run, Adrian said, breathing hard. I don't listen well. Despite everything, he almost smiled. Then his expression hardened. We need to move. Victor will have... Torches appeared in the distance. Multiple lights, moving toward them through the darkness. Too many to fight. The cottage, Elena said. Thomas's cottage. We can hide there until the constable arrives. If he arrives, she didn't say. If Anne made it. If Thomas believed her. Too many ifs. But they were out of options. They ran again, lungs burning, legs screaming. The groundskeeper's cottage sat at the edge of the estate, small and dark. Adrian kicked the door open. Unlocked, thank everything. And they stumbled inside. Elena barred the door while Adrian searched for anything they could use. He came back with a hunting rifle and a box of shells. Does it work? She asked. We're about to find out. Torches surrounded the cottage. Elena counted at least a dozen men. Victor's voice rang out over them. Adrian, I know you're in there. Come out and this ends peacefully. Adrian positioned himself at the window, rifle ready. The only thing ending is your scheme, cousin. The constable is coming. I have the evidence. It's over. Victor laughed. The constable? That doddering old man? Even if he believed whatever lies you've told him, he has no jurisdiction here. This is my estate now. It's my estate. Not for long. I have papers signed by 3 witnesses stating you're mentally unfit. The magistrate will have no choice but to grant me control. Elena's blood ran cold. He's been planning this for months, maybe longer. Adrian's jaw clenched. I won't let you do this. You don't have a choice. Surrender now, and I'll let Miss Virelli go. The men coming for her can find their own way. My quarrel is with you, not her. Don't believe him, Elena whispered. I don't. Adrian called back. And if I refuse? Then my men burn the cottage, with both of you inside. As if to punctuate the threat, one of the torches arced through the air and landed on the cottage roof. Flames licked upward. Elena's heart hammered. Adrian? I know. He looked at her, and something in his expression made her chest ache. I'm sorry for everything, for not seeing what Victor was doing, for not protecting you better, for not... Stop. This isn't your fault. It is. I trusted the wrong people. You trusted me. Did I? His eyes searched hers. You lied about everything. Why should I believe you now? Because I'm still here, Elena said fiercely. Because I could have run when I had the chance, and I didn't. Because I... Hoofbeats cut her off. Multiple horses, coming fast from the direction of the village. Through the smoke beginning to fill the cottage, Elena saw new torches, different voices. This is Constable Weeks. By authority of the Crown, I demand everyone lower their weapons. Victor's curse was audible even from inside. Constable? What a surprise. I've been informed of serious allegations, Mr. Hale. Fraud, theft, attempted murder. The Duke of Blackthorn has asked for my intervention. The Duke is not well. The Duke is perfectly well, Adrian called out, opening the cottage door. Smoke billowed around them as he and Elena emerged. And ready to press charges against both my cousins for conspiracy to commit fraud and attempted assault. Weeks was older than Elena had pictured, white-haired and stern-faced, but his eyes were sharp as he surveyed the scene. Behind him, a dozen men from the village sat on horseback, some armed with old muskets. I'll need to see this evidence, Weeks said. Elena held up the cloth bundle. Everything's here. Forged contracts, falsified ledgers, shell company transfers. Enough to prove both Victor and Elias Hale have been embezzling from the estate for over a year. Victor's face had gone white. She's lying. The woman's a criminal herself. Is she? Weeks dismounted. Because young Anne told me quite a story. About you imprisoning the Duke, selling information to smugglers, threatening violence. He gestured to his men. Restrain Mr. Victor Hale and Mr. Elias Hale. They'll answer questions at the village station. The village men moved forward. Victor backed up, hands raised. You can't do this. I have rights. So does His Grace. Weeks nodded to Adrian. Your Grace, are you unharmed? Well enough. Adrian swayed slightly and Elena grabbed his arm to steady him. Though I'd appreciate Dr. Morrison examining what he gave me, I suspect it was more than a simple sedative. We'll look into it. Weeks's gaze shifted to Elena. And you, miss, Anne said your life was in danger. It was. Is. Elena glanced at the eastern horizon where the first hints of dawn were breaking. Victor sold my location to dangerous men. They'll be here soon. How many? 30, maybe more, all armed. Weeks's expression hardened. Then we'd best prepare a welcome for them. Over the next 20 minutes, organized chaos erupted. Weeks sent riders to neighboring estates, calling for assistance. The village men took positions around the main approach to Blackthorn, makeshift barricades erected from farm equipment and stone walls. Adrian refused to rest despite Elena's protests. He moved through the preparations with grim determination, the drugs wearing off enough that he could think clearly. We need to fortify the main gate, he told Weeks. It's the only road wide enough for carriages. If we can bottleneck them there. Already done, Your Grace. My men know these roads. Any force coming up from the south will be spotted well before they arrive. As if summoned, a rider appeared. Constable, carriages coming up the southern road. 3 of them. Armed men. How many? Couldn't get close enough to count. More than 20 for certain. Elena felt her throat close. This was it. The men who'd been hunting her for 3 years. Here. Now. Adrian touched her shoulder. Stay in the house. Let me handle this. They came for me. You should stay safe. Please, Elena. Let me do this one thing right." The vulnerability in his voice made her chest ache. She nodded. But as Adrian moved to join the constable at the gate, Elena slipped into the house and found another rifle. She'd never fired one before, but she'd watched her father's men at the docks. Point, aim, squeeze. How hard could it be? The carriages rolled to a stop at Blackthorn's gates. The lead vehicle's door opened and a man stepped out, tall, scarred, with the kind of face that had seen too much violence and enjoyed it. "I'm here for the Virelli girl," he announced. "Been paid for her location. Hand her over and we leave peaceful." Weeks stepped forward. "You're trespassing on private property. Leave now or face arrest." The scarred man laughed. "You in what army, old man?" "This one." At Weeks's signal, the village men showed themselves. 20, maybe 25 total, spread across the wall and gates. Not impressive compared to the force in the carriages, but more than the scarred man had expected. His expression darkened. "You're making a mistake." "The only mistake," Adrian called out, "is yours. Elena Virelli is under my protection. You'll have to go through me to reach her." "That can be arranged." The scarred man gestured. Men poured from the carriages, exactly as many as Elias had predicted. 30, heavily armed, spreading into formation. Elena's heart hammered. This was about to turn into a bloodbath. Then, from the North Road, more riders appeared. Dozens of them. Tenants from Adrian's estate, alerted by Weeks's messengers. They carried farming tools mostly, scythes, axes, hay forks, but they outnumbered the smugglers 3-1. The scarred man looked around, calculating odds. His men were better armed, but they were surrounded. "Last chance," Weeks said. "Leave peacefully or be arrested." For a long moment, no one moved. Then the scarred man spat on the ground. "This isn't over, Virelli. We'll find you again." "I don't think you will," Elena said, stepping out from the house despite Adrian's sharp protest. She walked to the gate, rifle in hand, and met the scarred man's eyes. "Because I'm done running. You want me? Here I am. But you'll have to go through all of them first." She gestured to the assembled crowd, village men, tenant farmers, staff from Blackthorn. People who'd never met her a week ago. People who had no reason to protect her. But they stood anyway. Because Adrian had asked them to. Because Anne had convinced them it mattered. Because sometimes, people chose to do the right thing. The scarred man's jaw clenched. Then he turned and climbed back into his carriage. "Move out!" The carriages turned and rolled away, disappearing down the southern road. Elena's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the gravel, rifle clattering beside her. It was over. Actually, over. Adrian was beside her instantly, pulling her up, checking her for injuries. "Are you insane? You could have been killed." "So could you." "That's different." "It's not." Elena grabbed his shirt, bunching the fabric in her fists. "Stop trying to protect everyone else and let someone protect you for once." He stared at her, and something shifted in his expression. The anger bled away, leaving exhaustion and relief and something Elena was afraid to name. "You're a terrible liar," he said quietly. "I know. And you manipulated me, used my trust against me. I know that too. But you also saved my estate, exposed my cousins, stood up to armed smugglers with a rifle you didn't know how to use." Elena's throat tightened. "The rifle was just for show." "I gathered." Adrian's hands came up to cup her face, thumbs brushing over her cheekbones. "I should still be angry with you." "You should." "I am. Partly." "Only partly?" "The other part is too busy being grateful you're alive." Dawn broke fully now, spilling golden light over the grounds. Elena could see everything clearly, the assembled villagers starting to disperse, Weeks directing his men to escort Victor and Elias away in chains, Thomas extinguishing the last flames on the cottage roof, and Adrian looking at her like she was something precious. "What happens now?" she whispered. "Now?" Adrian let his hands fall but didn't step back. "Now you tell me the truth, all of it. No more lies, no more deception, everything. And then we figure out what comes next. Together, if you're willing." Elena felt tears sting her eyes. I'm willing. Weeks approached, clearing his throat. Your Grace, we'll need formal statements from both of you. And Miss Virelli, we'll need to document your father's affairs. Make sure those men don't return. Of course, Elena said. There's also the matter of your inheritance. If what Mr. Victor claimed is true about your father's business, it's true. Some of it, anyway. Elena straightened her shoulders. I'll cooperate fully with any investigation. I have nothing to hide anymore. Weeks nodded approvingly. Good. We'll begin in a few hours. Get some rest first. You both look like you need it. He walked away, leaving them alone in the growing daylight. I'm sorry, Elena said again, for everything I put you through. Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then, you did what you had to do to survive. I understand that now. I don't like it, but I understand. Can you forgive me? Eventually. He managed a tired smile. Ask me again in a few weeks. It was an absolution, but it was a beginning, and for the first time in 3 years, Elena felt something close to hope. The formal inquiry began 3 days later in Blackthorn's drawing room. Constable Weeks had brought a magistrate from the county seat, a severe-looking woman named Margaret Ashford, who arrived with 2 clerks and enough paperwork to reconstruct Victor and Elias's entire scheme. Elena sat across from them, hands folded in her lap, and told the truth. All of it. Her father's smuggling operation, the weapons shipments disguised as textiles, the opium routes through Mediterranean ports, the 30,000 pounds in profits that disappeared when he died, the partners who'd hunted her, convinced she knew where the money was hidden. And do you, Magistrate Ashford asked, pen poised over paper, know where it is? No, ma'am. My father never told me. I'm not sure it exists anymore. He had debts, gambling losses. He might have spent it before he died. Ashford's expression remained neutral. Yet these men still pursue you. They don't believe me. They think I'm lying to keep it for myself. Are you? Elena met her gaze steadily. No. I understand that my word carries little weight given my deception about my blindness. But I'm telling you the truth now. I have nothing to hide. Ashford studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded. Your cooperation is noted. However, there remains the matter of your inheritance. Your father's shipping company, while engaged in illegal activities, still had legitimate assets. Ships, warehouses, contracts. Those belong to you. I don't want them. That's not how inheritance works, Miss Virelli. Then I'll sell everything, donate the proceeds to charity. I want nothing to do with that life. Ashford's expression softened slightly. An admirable sentiment. We'll arrange for the proper legal transfers. She shuffled papers. Now, regarding the Hale cousins, the next 2 hours were spent documenting Victor and Elias's crimes. Elena walked them through every suspicious conversation, every strange financial detail, every moment that had raised her alarm. Adrian corroborated what he could, adding his own observations about the falsified contracts and hidden account transfers. The evidence was damning. Victor had embezzled nearly 20,000 pounds over 18 months. Elias had helped launder the money through London banking houses, taking a 15% cut. Both had planned to bankrupt the estate, force Adrian into selling, and purchase Blackthorn themselves at a fraction of its value. They would have succeeded, Ashford said, if not for Miss Virelli's intervention. She saved the estate, Adrian said quietly. Saved me. Ashford glanced between them, something knowing in her eyes. Indeed. Well, the Crown will prosecute both men to the full extent of the law. Given the amounts involved and the premeditated nature of the scheme, they'll face significant prison sentences. How significant? Elena asked. 10 years minimum, possibly more if we uncover additional victims. Ashford closed her ledger. Justice will be served, Miss Virelli. You have my word. After the magistrate left, Elena found herself alone in the drawing room. The late afternoon sun slanted through the windows, painting everything gold. She should have felt relief. Victory, even. Instead, she felt hollow. Footsteps made her turn. Adrian stood in the doorway, looking as exhausted as she felt. The bruises from their fight with Elias had faded to yellow-green, but dark circles still shadowed his eyes. How are you holding up? He asked. I don't know. Elena sank into a chair. It's over, really over. I keep waiting for something else to go wrong. Same. He crossed to the window, staring out at the grounds. Weeks received word this morning. The smugglers who came for you have left the country. Apparently, your father's former partners decided cutting their losses was wiser than continuing the hunt. So I'm free. You're free. The words should have felt triumphant. Instead, they felt strange, foreign. What will you do? Adrian asked. Now that you can go anywhere, be anyone. I don't know that either. Elena traced a pattern on the chair's armrest. For 3 years, all I did was run. I never thought about what came after, never let myself imagine a future. And now? Now I'm terrified. She looked up at him. Being hunted was simple. You survive or you don't. But this? Having choices again? Having a future? I don't know how to do that. Adrian turned from the window. Neither do I. My whole life has been about obligation. Saving the estate, protecting the tenants, living up to my father's title despite everything he did to destroy it. I've never asked myself what I want. What do you want? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, I want to stop being afraid. Afraid of failing, of trusting the wrong people, of letting everyone down. I want... He stopped, jaw working. I want to be able to look at you without wondering if you're lying. The words stung, but Elena understood them. I know. I broke something between us. Maybe it can't be fixed. Maybe not. Adrian moved closer, stopping a few feet away. But maybe we build something new instead. Something honest. Is that possible? After everything? I don't know, but I'd like to try. If you're willing. Elena's throat tightened. I've never stayed in one place longer than a few months. I don't know how to be still. Then we'll figure it out together. He held out his hand. No more lies, no more secrets. Just us, trying to be better than we were. She looked at his outstretched hand, scarred from work, bruised from fighting, steady despite everything. Then she placed her hand in his. Okay, she whispered. Let's try. The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal proceedings and estate repairs. Victor and Elias were formally charged and transferred to a holding facility to await trial. The funds they'd stolen were partially recovered, though much had been spent or hidden in accounts that would take months to untangle. Adrian threw himself into rebuilding. New contracts with tenant farmers, repairs to damaged buildings, hiring staff to replace those who'd left during the chaos. He worked dawn to dusk, driven by something that looked like penance. Elena helped where she could. She had a head for numbers, discovered she could negotiate contracts better than most of the solicitors Adrian consulted. The skills her father had taught her, reading people, spotting deception, understanding complex financial structures, turned out to be useful for legitimate business too. But the nights were hardest. She'd wake from nightmares about locked rooms and approaching footsteps, about Victor's cold smile and the scarred smuggler's threats. The estate felt too quiet, too exposed. Every shadow could be hiding danger. One night, 3 weeks after the inquiry, she gave up on sleep entirely and went downstairs to the library. She'd been reading her way through Adrian's collection, novels mostly, escapist fiction that let her forget her own story for a while. She was curled in a chair near the fire when Adrian found her. Can't sleep? He asked. Never could. You? Same. He settled into the chair opposite hers. They'd fallen into this pattern, late nights talking, carefully circling around everything they couldn't quite say to each other. What are you reading? Elena held up the book. Gothic romance. Lots of brooding and mysterious mansions. Hits close to home. That's why I like it. Makes my life seem normal by comparison. Adrian smiled slightly. Then his expression sobered. I've been thinking about what you said, about not knowing how to have a future. And I realized I've been doing the same thing, just going through motions, trying to fix problems without asking why, or what comes after. He leaned forward, elbows on knees. The estate is stable now. The tenants are taken care of. I could sell it, move to London, start over somewhere no one knows my name. Elena's chest tightened. Are you going to? No, because that would be running, and I'm tired of running too. His eyes met hers. But I also can't keep doing this. Managing an estate I never wanted, living up to expectations I didn't choose. I need something more. What would more look like? I don't know yet, but I think it starts with being honest about what I want. Not what I should want, or what's expected, but what actually matters to me. That's terrifying. It is. He reached across the space between them, and Elena took his hand without thinking. His palm was warm, calloused from work. But I think it's less terrifying if we're honest together, if we stop pretending to be people we're not. Elena felt something crack open in her chest. I don't know who I am without the lies. I've been pretending for so long. Then we figure it out, both of us. His thumb brushed over her knuckles. No more performing, no more hiding, just trying to be real. What if real isn't enough? What if it is? They sat there in the firelight, hands linked, neither speaking. Outside, wind rattled the windows. Inside, something fragile and tentative and possibly important was taking shape between them. Finally, Elena said, I think I want to stay. Here, at Blackthorn. Not forever necessarily, but for now, until I figure out what comes next. I'd like that. But I need my own space, my own purpose. I can't just be your house guest indefinitely. What about being my business partner? Elena blinked. What? Adrian straightened, energy sparking in his eyes for the first time in weeks. You're brilliant with contracts and negotiations. You understand finance better than anyone I've consulted. What if we formalized it? You help me manage the estate's business affairs. We split the profits. Adrian, I can't. Why not? You've already been doing it. This just makes it official, legal. You'd have your own income, your own standing, not as my charity case, but as a valued partner. The offer was generous, too generous, probably. But as Elena turned it over in her mind, she realized it wasn't charity. He needed her skills. She needed purpose. It was practical. What would people say? About a duke taking a business partner? Probably that I'm pragmatic. Adrian's smile turned wry. And if they gossip about something else, well, we're both used to being talked about by now. This is crazy. Completely. I don't know the first thing about running an estate. You'll learn. I did. Elena found herself smiling. All right. Partners. Partners. Adrian squeezed her hand once, then released it. We'll draw up proper contracts in the morning. Make it official. Legally binding? Extremely. Good. I don't trust verbal agreements anymore. Smart woman. They sat there until the fire burned low, talking about plans and possibilities, about converting the unused West Wing into offices, about renegotiating contracts with suppliers, about hiring more staff from the village, about building something that belonged to both of them. When Elena finally climbed the stairs to bed, she felt lighter than she had in years. Not free of fear, she wasn't sure she'd ever be completely free of that. But free of the weight of constant deception. She could be herself here. Flawed and complicated and still figuring it out. That was something. The months that followed were harder than either of them anticipated. Learning to work together meant learning each other's boundaries, triggers, and unspoken rules. Elena was used to making decisions alone, used to trusting no one. Adrian was used to bearing all responsibility himself, used to protecting everyone but accepting no help. They clashed. Often. You can't just negotiate a new contract without consulting me, Adrian said one afternoon, frustration bleeding into his voice. We're partners. That means we make decisions together. You were at the North Fields. The supplier needed an answer immediately. Then you send someone to get me. That would have taken 2 hours. We'd have lost the deal. Better to lose a deal than undermine the partnership. Elena threw her pen down. Fine. Next time I'll wait, even if it costs us money. That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying? Adrian dragged a hand through his hair. I'm saying I need to be able to trust that you won't make major decisions without me. That's what this is built on, trust. And every time you act alone, it reminds me of the lies. The words hit like a slap. Elena stood, chair scraping back. I can't change the past. I've apologized. I've been honest about everything since. What more do you want? I want to stop being afraid you're going to disappear. That one morning I'll wake up and you'll be gone. The raw honesty in his voice stopped her. You think I'd leave? I don't know. Would you? Elena met his eyes across the desk. No, I'm not running anymore, but I can't prove that. You just have to believe me. I'm trying. Try harder. It was harsh but fair, they both knew it. Adrian sighed. You're right. I'm sorry. I'm not angry about the contract. I'm angry that I still can't fully trust my own judgment. That's my issue, not yours. It's both our issues. We're both broken in our own ways. Elena moved around the desk, closing the distance between them. But maybe that's okay. Maybe we don't have to be perfect to make this work. Maybe. He looked at her, vulnerability written across his face. I don't want to lose this. What we're building, even when it's hard. Neither do I. They stood there close enough to touch, but not touching. The tension between them shifted, became something different, something they'd both been carefully avoiding. Elena, Adrian started. Don't. She stepped back. Not yet. We're still figuring out how to be partners. Adding anything else would complicate things. It's already complicated. More complicated then. He nodded, accepting it. But something in his expression said the conversation was far from over. By summer, the partnership had found its rhythm. Elena managed the business affairs, contracts, suppliers, investments. Adrian handled the land and people, crops, tenants, village relations. They met every morning to coordinate, every evening to review. It worked. More than that, it thrived. The estate's income doubled within 6 months. Tenant satisfaction improved. The village prospered. Word spread of the Duke of Blackthorn's brilliant business manager, and other estates started reaching out for consultation. Elena built a reputation, not as a blind heiress or a fugitive or a liar, but as someone sharp, fair, and ruthlessly competent. It felt like being herself for the first time. One evening in late July, she found Adrian in the gardens. He was sitting on the stone bench where they'd walked together that first week, back when she was still pretending. Penny for your thoughts? She asked. He glanced up, smiling. Just thinking about how different things are. 6 months ago, I was barely holding this place together. Now. He gestured at the grounds, well-maintained and blooming. Now it feels like home again. Elena sat beside him. You did that. You made the hard decisions. We did it, together. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set behind the mountains. Somewhere in the distance, sheep bells chimed. The air smelled like cut grass and roses. I heard from Magistrate Ashford, Adrian said eventually. Victor and Elias's trial concluded, both sentenced to 12 years. How do you feel about that? Conflicted. Their family. I should feel something, regret, maybe. Sadness. He shook his head. But mostly I just feel relieved it's over. That's allowed. Is it? Yes. Elena bumped his shoulder with hers. They made their choices, you made yours. You don't owe them forgiveness. Do I owe you forgiveness? The question caught her off guard. I don't know. Do you? Adrian turned to look at her fully. I've been thinking about that, about what you did and why. And I realized something. He paused, choosing words carefully. You did what you had to do to survive. You lied to protect yourself. That doesn't make it right, but it makes it understandable. And everything since, the honesty, the partnership, the work you've put in, that's who you really are. Elena's throat tightened. You don't have to. I forgive you, he said simply. For the lies, the deception, all of it. I forgive you. The words hit like a wave. Elena felt tears sting her eyes. Thank you. And I'm sorry too, for not seeing what Victor was doing sooner, for putting you in danger, for doubting you when you'd proven yourself a dozen times over. We're even, then. Are we? Adrian's hand found hers on the bench between them. Because I think we might be something more than even. Elena's pulse kicked up. Adrian, I know you said not yet, that we needed to figure out the partnership first. And we have. It works. We work. His thumb traced circles on her palm. So I'm asking, Is it still too soon? For what? For this. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Their lips met softly, tentatively, like they were both afraid of breaking something precious. When they pulled apart, Elena was shaking. That was a mistake? No, the opposite. She laughed, overwhelmed. I'm terrified. Me too. What if we ruin the partnership? What if we don't? Elena looked at him, this man who'd protected her when he had every reason not to, who'd trusted her despite the lies, who'd built something real with her when they were both broken. Okay, she whispered. Let's try. Again. For real this time. Adrian's smile was like sunrise. For real. They kissed again, longer this time. And when they finally walked back to the house hand in hand, Elena felt something she'd never expected to feel again. Hope. Real, fragile, terrifying hope. The following spring, they made it official. Not the partnership that had been legally binding for months, but the relationship. Adrian proposed on the same bench where they'd had their first real conversation. No grand gestures, no elaborate speeches, just, I want to spend my life with you. Will you let me? Elena said yes before he'd even finished the question. The wedding was small. Village families, estate staff, a handful of Adrian's friends from university. No elaborate ceremony, no society pages coverage. Just two people who'd found each other in darkness, choosing to walk into light together. Mrs. Brennan cried through the entire ceremony. Anne served as Elena's attendant, glowing with pride. Thomas gave Elena away since she had no family left. But as Elena stood across from Adrian, speaking vows about honesty and partnership and building a future together, she realized she did have family. These people, the staff who'd believed in her, the tenants who'd stood with her, Adrian who'd chosen her despite everything, they were her family now. After the ceremony, during the celebration in Blackthorn's gardens, Constable Weeks pulled her aside. Got word from London, he said quietly. Your father's old associates have officially closed their books on the missing 30,000. They've accepted it's gone. So I'm really free. You're really free. Weeks smiled. Though between you and me, I think you freed yourself months ago. This is just paperwork catching up. He was right. Elena had stopped running the day she decided to stay and fight. Everything since had been learning how to stand still. How to build instead of just surviving. It wasn't perfect. She still had nightmares sometimes. Still caught herself planning escape routes, counting exists. Adrian still struggled with trust, still checked and double-checked decisions. But they were working on it, together. That evening, as the celebration wound down and stars emerged overhead, Adrian found her standing at the edge of the garden, looking out over the estate. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked, echoing her words from months before. Elena leaned against him, just thinking about how strange life is. A year ago, I was hiding in that carriage, pretending to be blind, terrified of everything. And now you're the Duchess of Blackthorn, co-owner of a thriving estate, and the most terrifying negotiator in 3 counties. She laughed. Is that what they're calling me? Among other things, all respectful, I assure you. Liar. Takes one to know one. Elena elbowed him gently. Too soon. Will it ever not be too soon? Probably not. Good. Adrian wrapped his arms around her from behind, chin resting on her shoulder. I'd hate for us to get boring. They stood there as darkness settled, watching lights appear in windows across the estate. People going about their lives, safe and fed and thriving, because of decisions they'd made, risks they'd taken. I love you, Ina said quietly. I know. That's your response? Would you prefer something more romantic? Maybe. Adrian turned her to face him, hands framing her face like they had that dawn when everything had almost fallen apart. I love you too, even though you're stubborn and reckless and make business decisions without consulting me. I only did that once, twice, once and a half. We're married now, you have to be honest. Elena smiled. Fine, twice, but only because you were being impossible. I'm always impossible. I know. I love you anyway. They kissed under the stars, and somewhere in the house behind them, someone started playing music. Dancing had begun, laughter spilling out into the warm spring night. Their life stretched ahead, uncertain, challenging, full of potential disasters and arguments and hard choices, but also full of partnership and honesty and the kind of love that was built on ruins. Elena Virelli had spent 3 years running from her past. Now, finally, she was running toward her future. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, she wasn't running alone. The next morning, as sunlight streamed through their bedroom window, Elena woke to find Adrian already awake, watching her. "What?" she asked, self-conscious. "Nothing, just, I can see you. That's what happens when people open their eyes." "No, I mean really see you. Not the blind girl, not the fugitive, not even the business partner, just you." Elena's throat tightened. "And? And you're extraordinary. I'm really not." "You are." He traced a finger down her cheek. "You survived things that would have destroyed most people. You rebuilt yourself from nothing. You chose honesty when lying would have been easier. You're brave and brilliant and occasionally infuriating." "Occasionally?" "And I'm grateful every single day that you chose to stay." Elena caught his hand, pressed a kiss to his palm. "Where else would I go? You're stuck with me now." "Good. But even when I make unilateral business decisions?" "Even then. Though we're still working on that." "We're working on a lot of things." "We are." Adrian pulled her closer. "But we have time. No more running, no more hiding, just time to figure it out." Outside, the estate was waking up. She could hear birds, distant voices, the normal sounds of life continuing. Inside, wrapped in warmth and safety and the arms of someone who knew her completely and loved her anyway, Elena Virelli finally understood what freedom meant. It wasn't the absence of danger. It was the choice to stop hiding, to be seen, fully and honestly, and to be chosen anyway. She'd spent 3 years invisible, wearing blindness like armor. Now she was finally, truly seen, and it was terrifying and wonderful and exactly what she'd been running toward all along.